All right, noting the time on this clock and the presence of a quorum, I will call tonight's meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. We'll start with, as we do with all meetings, citizens' concerns. If there's anybody here who wishes to speak briefly on an issue not otherwise on our agenda.
It's Tara Fredericks, West Acton. I have a concern because of the Kelly's Corner sales team that seems to be telling different things to different groups. I was at the Economic Development Committee meeting the other night, and Dave Didrikson said that he doesn't care about safety, he doesn't care about the risk of the sidewalks or the length of the crosswalks. All he cares about is getting through the intersection faster. And someone from the sales team said, that's the plan. And yet I'll be at other meetings when people are told that it's not going to be measurably faster, that it's about safety and walkability. And so it seems to be a mixed message. And I feel like that really the vote is, to me, faster or slower, more development or less development. And I think that we got to be honest with ourselves. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else with citizens' concerns? Yes, Bill.
Bill Clawa, Piper Road. I'm here tonight to speak a little bit about the snow removal, because I know we've really been inundated this year with a lot of blizzards. And the big thing I have are the condition of the sidewalks and access to sidewalks, because we have in South Acton all along School Street parking. You can't utilize it too well because the snow is that far out from the sidewalk. So I don't know, we used to go through with a snow blower and remove it all and put it down the dump to melt eventually, but I don't know whether the policy has changed or what, but I also, being a resident of Piper Road, use the sidewalk on Farmstead Way for exercise, and it doesn't even get plowed. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, well, we can definitely follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, the chairman's update. A couple upcoming events. The Housing for All Coalition and the League of Women Voters will be hosting a forum on accessory dwelling units on Wednesday, March 6th at 7:30 p.m. in room 204. There will be warrant articles related to this, so if you'd like more information on accessory dwelling units, please attend that forum. The League of Women Voters is also hosting their candidating event on Saturday, March 16th at 1 p.m. in the Conan Elementary School cafeteria. This is an event where they've invited all of the candidates for local office to come, and they travel around to each table, so you get to speak with them individually. And my understanding is that almost all of the candidates for office will be there, so it should be a good and useful event. Speaking of the elections, the last day to register to vote in the local election is March 6th, and the elections are on Tuesday, March 26th, and town meeting starts on Monday, April 1st. The Mass Department of Transportation is holding their hearing on Kelly's Corner next week, March 5th at 7 p.m. in this room, room 204 of Town Hall. Please come and participate in that. And tickets are available now for the Open Door Theater production of The Little Mermaid. The production will be on the weekends of March 29th and April 5th, and I know that there are at least 2 former selectmen and what I view as one very attractive sea creature who I'll be marrying later this year who are in the production. So I know that there's been a lot of work going into it and that it will be a really good time, and keep your eye out for a particular grasshopper. With that, Mr. Manager, that kind of day.
Thank you. So as many of you know, there are a number of trees and power lines down, so I hope you are careful arriving here and you're careful going home. And if you're here to stay warm or to charge your phone, when this meeting ends, we do have the public safety facility that we have opened for anyone that their power isn't turned back on yet. So if you need to stop by there and charge your phone or hang out, you're welcome to do that all night. We have a few events coming up, some of which we'll talk about later in the meeting, but we're hosting an open house to talk about Kelly's Corner here on the 13th and the 21st of March. It's an informal setting to provide an opportunity for one-on-one conversations with staff and volunteers that are working on the project, and more details will be coming out about that event, or those events, so stay tuned. There's also a forum being planned related to the sewer project. It's called the Sewer Forum on March 14th, and it will be in this room, and stay tuned for more information about that as well. And just for the board's information and the public, I filed an application today, sort of prospective, related to the selective demolition of a portion of the Asa Parlin House. We're currently before the Community Preservation Committee and Historic District Commission, and one of the thoughts that came up during the Historic District Commission is that if they had an application to review, they'd be able to say definitively what they'd be comfortable with. So an application has been filed to reflect the proposed work, and if it's approved, it's great, and if it isn't, we will have that information. And finally, there was this mention at our last meeting about the Efficiency and Regionalization Grant. I just wanted to let the board know that we did apply in collaboration with MAPC for a grant called Making Connections. The purpose is to address high priority transportation needs in our region using public and private transportation resources. So if we're successful, I hope we will, I'll provide additional updates. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Mr. Manager. Okay, it's not quite 7:10, so I will go through the consent agenda. Please say hold if there are any items that you would like to hold. Number 11, committee appointment, R. Scott Robb, Associate Member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, term to expire June 30th, 2022. Number 12, meeting minutes for February 4th, 2019. Number 13, meeting minutes, executive session, January 28th, 2019. Number 14, accept gift Recreation Department Boston Bijou for the amount of $1,500 to support the 2019 summer concerts and special events. Number 15, accept gift Recreation Department Danny's Place for the amount of $500 to support the 2019 summer concerts and special events. Number 16, accept gift Recreation Department Gould's Clothing for the amount of $6,000 to support costs of the Independence Day celebration. Number 17, accept gift Recreation Department Century Bank for the amount of $500 to support the 2019 summer concert series and special events. Number 18, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Neshoba Valley Neighbors Club, Nagog Woods Clubhouse, March 16th, 2019. Number 19, request to establish a 53G account for the building division. Number 20, board appointment, Dina Ferrara, Board of Registrars, term to expire 2022. Number 21, request to dispose of obsolete items, Acton Memorial Library. And number 22, Selectmen reports.
Move to approve
Second.
consent items.
Joan has made a motion, Janet's seconded. Any other comment? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, it's just about 7:10 now, so we move on to our first hearing. The Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on February 25th, 2019 at 7:10 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, on the application of MDM Group LLC doing business as Dunkin' Donuts at 212 Main Street, Acton, Mass. Under Section 140 of the Massachusetts General Laws for Common Victualers License. The application can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. Is there anybody here from Dunkin' Donuts? Yes, do you mind just coming up to the microphone and briefly just explaining your application?
Hi, my name is Mark Page. I'm the owner of the Dunkin' Donuts at 212 Main Street. I believe it was just a lapse in the mailing that we didn't renew it.
Yep, so there's no changes to the
No.
layout or anything like
Nothing.
that? Okay, were there any questions from members of the board? Any questions from the audience? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, Joe made a motion, Janet seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, you're all set. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. Okay, and our next one's not till 7:15. We have a little bit of time. Are the folks from the Cable Advisory Committee here? Yeah, okay. Do you want to come up and just speak briefly about yours? Because I think yours should be pretty quick, so we might be able to.
Certainly. My name is Oleg Volinsky. I'm a chairperson for Acton Cable Advisory Committee. We identified that the charter of the committee was submitted last time in September of '92, and we wanted to revise it. Most of the revisions are related to changes in terms of cable providers in town, as well as introduction of ACAT or ActonTV in town. So we just want to make sure that new charter is up to date with the times and responsibilities.
Were there questions or comments from members of the board? I'll start with Peter.
Are we negotiating the new contract now, or when does that run out?
So we started the process. We worked with the town manager to retain a lawyer, attorney that will represent town, and we started the process of identifying our negotiation positions.
And when does the current contract run out?
So Comcast, and I'm going to go by memories, 2020 is Comcast and Verizon is 2021. In fact, we just received the notice from Verizon regarding the contract renewal.
Okay, and the only comment I have about the charge is we usually have the number of committee members as part of these charges. I know it's part of your old charge. You're not changing the membership?
We're not changing any other parameters. We just want to renew the purpose, I guess, purpose and duties committee.
Well, and I suggest that the final just add back in the
Sure.
composition of the committee.
Definitely will provide that.
Okay, thank you for the work you do.
Oh, no problem.
Janet?
That was, Peter's last comment was what I was going to suggest, was I was assuming this description of kind of responsibilities was something you were going to drop into the old charge, because it talks about the committee structure and all that stuff that has information other than what you're doing, the structure of the committee. So if you're going to do that, that's fine. I think it would be good if, who's your liaison? Are you the liaison? Oh, you're
John.
the liaison, but it might be good if you just, John just okays what it looks like in its final form or something, so that.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I'm fine. I think you're doing great work, so.
Thank you,
I'm fine
appreciate
with
it.
Authorized to see what happens. If you do good work, you get more responsibility, so thank you.
Joan or John, any comments or questions?
All good. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we can approve it tonight maybe and just mention that you'll add in the composition. That was the only thing I noticed as well. Joan, did you have something that you want to, any other comments or questions from the audience? Okay, does somebody want to make a motion?
Move to approve the proposed amendment of the charge for the Cable Advisory Committee.
Second.
Okay, Janet's made a motion, Joan seconded it. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much, and thank you for your
Thank you for putting us forward.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I figured you'd be quick. Okay, now, geez Louise. We're going through quick. I'm going to call it's close enough to 7:15 on my watch. So I will read the notice for our next hearing. The Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on February 25th, 2019 at 7:15 p.m., continued from February 4th, 2019 in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room, 204 at Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, on the application of Orange Door Hospitality, LLC, located at 248 Arlington Street, Acton, Mass., under Chapter 140, Section 183A of the Massachusetts General Laws for an entertainment license. The application can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. Is there somebody from Orange Door here? Okay, great, excellent. If you don't mind just coming up and explaining your application.
Sure. Chris Powell, co-owner of Orange Door Kitchen. Just one note, the address listed is wrong. It's 251 Arlington Street. I think you read 248.
Oh, I did. Okay, is that a problem, Lisa, if I have the? No. Okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So the application is to cover off on live music night we do every other Wednesday at Orange Door Kitchen. It's mostly like jazz, blues, acoustic type of thing, listening music. About 40 or 50 people max in the place for the concerts.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Just confirm this is all inside, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the time you had noted on it was like 7 to 9:30 approximate. Is that, I mean, what time do you guys close on Wednesdays?
So our business is unique. We don't have normal hours. Well, we have So we're an event-based business.
Right.
So our commercial kitchen closes at 5:30. Our co-working closes at 4:30. The concert doors open at 6:30. Music starts at 7:30. Is done at 9:30.
Okay, yeah, so I think.
I mean, sometimes people run over by 15 minutes is why I said
Right, okay,
approximate.
yeah. I think we'll probably put 9:30,
Yeah.
15 minutes is fine. Okay, any other questions or comments from members of the audience? And do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Okay,
Second.
all right, there we go. Joan has made a motion, Peter seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay. Faster than I can write. Okay, so up next is the Chapter N review and discussion. I meant to note that this also said, 17 Woodbury Road. That was a mistake. We're not talking about 17 Woodbury Road tonight. So yeah, sorry, Brad, to give you a panic. This is just about the Chapter N review and discussion. So I think Brad from the Historical Commission is here. If you want to come up and just give us a brief overview, that would be perfect.
Sure. Brad Maxwell, I'm with the Historical Commission. We last updated our bylaw, or Chapter N, the demolition bylaw, about 10 years ago. So this is an update and builds on learnings from around the Commonwealth and input we received from Mass Historic Commission, as well as a lot of comments from the public, both at our own meetings as well as a public hearing that we held for the specific purpose of receiving feedback from whoever was interested. And also, it has been circulated through various departments within Town Hall to try and get feedback. We also went several rounds with Town Council to fine-tune different parts of it. And I think this is about, where we are today is about 6 drafts deep. And so we feel very good about it. It's a pretty balanced draft, I think. It updates and also clarifies some things. So, for example, it makes a lot clearer for purposes of the building department to know when we consider something a demolition that would trigger a review or not. So we've added language that says it's 25% or more of any significant feature, and then defines what a significant feature would be, things like that. It does add slightly longer protection. It adds 6 months to the 12 months that we have in already for the demolition delay. So up to 18 months, which is now the standard that MHC is putting forward. And a lot of other towns in the Commonwealth are adopting. And there are a handful of other updates that we have. I'm happy to go through in more detail, but I don't want to go too long.
Thanks, Brad. Questions or comments, Janet?
Okay, first I will suggest, I have a red line version that I did myself. I copied the current bylaw and I copied the proposed bylaw and I created my, because, well, I'm big on red line. Maybe it's an attorney thing, but, you know.
Brad's an attorney as well.
Thing, you know, I like to see what's new. It's just much easier, even though this is the official version. But I had a question just about historic preservation. I know that with regard to preservation of open space, we have sort of a system in place. There's a Acton Conservation Trust cultivates relationships with the property owners, and if the land is in private hands, just sort of say, hey, remember the town or whatever when you're ready to sell. But with historic properties, I sometimes wonder if there's a way for historic preservation buffs to cultivate relationships with people who own historically significant properties, especially when they're maybe getting on in years and maybe they're starting to struggle with maintaining it, to see at least if you can find other people who are interested in having historic properties, because I know that's sort of a specialized group because of the cost, but I didn't know if there had been any discussion about being more proactive so that you don't even have to resort to demo delay so much or have people get upset with developers or with the sellers or something about the fact that a historically significant building is at risk of disappearing. So If not, no, I'm just, okay, maybe it's not a
Yeah.
question, it's just a thought. I've shared it before
Yeah.
with regard to other properties, but I just feel as if, because of the interest in historic preservation, that maybe if some group of citizens would be more proactive and not just sort of turn to the town and say, you buy it. I think, because I think there are people who want to own historic houses, and maybe they need a little help or something with the cost or something, but just a thought.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
a very good thought. And certainly something that we struggle with, how do we best encourage those who are interested in historic properties to connect them with people who are looking
Right.
to sell or may be looking to sell. So it's an important idea, I think, something we could certainly embrace.
Because I've known when I was I grew up in Sudbury, and I knew that there were people who would just they would buy wrecks of old houses, and then they would fix them up, make them beautiful, live there for a while, and then they would sell them. But they loved doing it. It was a
Right.
passion for them, and they were young, too. I don't know where they got their money, but maybe they had family money. But it was a big service to the community because you preserve some beautiful homes that way. So, but anyhow, but thank you. I know this has been long in the works, so finally, it's here. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? John?
Yes, thank you. Brad does a very good, thoughtful job, and I used the Gilbert's Cliff Notes and read the summary of all revisions.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just echo, I mean, as the liaison to the Historical Commission, I've kind of followed this along as you guys have worked on it, and just wanted to thank you. I think it was a really thoughtful process that you went through, and just, to reiterate that you worked very closely with town staff, particularly with the building department, to make sure that this worked better for them as well, just to make that process smoother, because sometimes there have certainly been hiccups and things that go, missed, or things that get sent to you that, just aren't something that would qualify, and then that takes everybody's time. So I think it's a much better process overall, and I think there are a lot of improvements in here as well, and that will address issues particularly that we've seen as well with people trying to get permits, demolition delays, or pull the demolition permit, not necessarily intending to do a demo, but just so that they get the delay and can wait it out and then have those options open, even if they don't necessarily intend to use it. And that's not what that's for, and that's not what the purpose of the demo delay is for. So I think this just closes some of those loopholes that people have found. I'm sure there's others that they will find, but I think it makes it a lot smoother for everybody involved, and does bring you in line with what a lot of other communities are doing. So thank you guys for your hard work on this, and we won't take a vote on it tonight. It was just an FYI before, because this will be a warrant article for a town meeting, and so we will take our position on those on next Monday, March 4th. So I just wanted people to have a chance to ask any questions about this. So are there any questions or comments from the audience? Yes, if you just want to come up to the microphone. Sorry, can you come up to the microphone, because we're on TV, so you have to speak into that. And if you could just say your name and street, please.
Yeah, it's Elena Petrov, 1 Pinewood Road in Acton. I would like just make a comment again about what you proposed, to reach out to the owners and find out the people who might be interested to buy. As a real estate agent, I can tell you it's a very specific group of the people who would be interested to buy, and I think it will be good for the town to promote the grants and the possibility to obtain the money on the preservation of historic properties a little bit more, maybe like on the website, if you do have for historic homes, because there are available grants for the letting and preservation of historic homes through the government help. That will bring the money to restore and support the properties. So I think it's nice to promote that kind of availability through the historic committee. And I know that we do have real estate agents who are interested to work on that, and they do have relationship with these kind of buyers. But at the same time, the government help, a lot of people don't know about that, and I think in the website we should promote that.
Great, that's a great idea. Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else? All right, seeing nobody, thank you very much, Brad, for coming tonight. We will take our position next week. Okay, up next is the Sewer Enterprise Fund and Capital discussion. Mr. Manager / Paul.
Thank you. As presented in the budget presentation in December, there are funds proposed to continue the design work related to the sewer project, and the next part of that would be preliminary survey and design work in the area leading to West Acton. So we provided information in your packet from engineering, and Paul Campbell, our town engineer, is available here tonight. He's been working very closely with the West Acton Sewer Advisory Committee to try to develop this program, and then now they're starting a large process rather, to make sure that the public has an opportunity to learn about things that are being proposed. And any questions from the board, Paul or any of us are happy to address.
Great, thank you. Paul, did you want to give a?
Yeah, I was asked to, Paul Campbell, town engineer, was asked to talk about a couple things in particular. So there's the forum on March 14th, so it'll be open to the public at a regular West Acton Sewer Committee meeting. So we hope to get a lot of feedback from the public there. Regarding my memo for the, discussing the budget request, so I thought I'd talk about that a little bit more and what exactly is involved. So it's $225 in the sewer enterprise operating budget, and that would get us a survey of West Acton and a preliminary design of the West Acton sewer project. So the survey is just like a survey you would get for your house. It would show Mass Ave, all the roads, property lines, people's houses, trees, things like that. It's the base plan that engineer uses to design future work with. So that's the starting point of any project for an engineer. And what's nice about that is that once we get that done, it's kind of evergreen. We can always dust it off the shelf for a later time. Things change a little bit, but it's pretty evergreen. And then we can also use that for other purposes too. Like I wrote in my memo, Mass Ave is a priority sidewalk area. So getting a survey done of Mass Ave, I can repurpose that to design a sidewalk and get that process moving. And then the Water District reached out to me. They have some planning for West Acton, and they need to do a survey. So rather than duplicate efforts, we could extend the survey limits beyond where the sewer project would be to the Boxborough line, and it's just a marginal cost extra, and we could split the cost with the Water District, thereby, utilizing public funds pretty efficiently, I think. So, so that's the first part, is the survey. And then the preliminary design, that would get us a design of the sewer system. It wouldn't be the final design because there's a lot more information you need for the final design. They would have to do borings to test for where ledge is. They'd have to dig test pits, find utilities. It's kind of what we're seeing in Kelly's Corner right now, like the next few steps. But this will get us a preliminary design, just like Kelly's Corner. You'll be able to see something on paper, and it'll get us closer to what the project is, So right now you see in cost estimates, there are wide ranges. This would narrow up the range so that we know a little bit more information. So I thought it would provide that extra benefit for other things. It'll give us more information for a later time. If the town decides to pursue the sewer project, you'll have better information to make the judgment on the total project. And also the school choice. So it's like, this is a 3-year project for the sewer. So based off of what I've seen with the school, Gates choice, if they're looking to open in fall 2022, we'd have to start the survey in the fall of 2019 to meet them, to give them the opportunity to connect if they chose to connect. So I kind of wrote out there what the options are for connecting for the school. As far as I know, they understand that it's a budget neutral decision for them. Public property, it's assessed for the sewer based off of what the avoided cost of what you would have paid to build an on-site treatment. So our West Acton Library, instead of building another septic system for that, we just assign whatever the cost is of building a septic system for West Acton Library, and that would be paid out of the general tax fund as an assessment to the sewer project. So same thing with the school, whatever they can build on site, they would build something, it'd get peer reviewed by us, and it would get approved by Mass DEP, and whatever that avoided cost is of a real treatment option on site, that's what their assessment would be for the sewer project. So doing this now just keeps the options open if the school pursues that, and then it provides these other benefits. So if I have any other questions, I can kind of answer.
Janet is the liaison.
I'm the liaison. I'm the chairman of the West Acton Sewer Action Advisory Committee. That wasn't necessarily my choice, but my predecessor left the board. So, and I was the only one who had some remote connection to wastewater treatment, for good or for bad. But I just wanted to sort of prompt some information out of Paul. First of all, I guess you've addressed in this spreadsheet sort of the issue of with schools, without schools. And I would just like to point out that last column on the right, Twin School at Gates, has numbers in billions, which
it's clearly a typo,
which is, I think it's a formula issue.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be, and we're not sure what that's supposed to be, but anyhow. But obviously, there's some lack of certainty because we don't know yet what AB is going to be doing with its school building project. And I heard that they sent in, I think it was you talked to somebody else who said, that they're sending in the proposal, their proposal they just sent in contemplates septic. But as Paul explained, the cost to the school is basically the same, whether they sewer or they do septic. But there is some uncertainty about what the schools are going to do, which is why this proposed appropriation, I don't know if it's actually going to be spent or if, but it has to be authorized because of the schedule. I think to some extent the schedule for seeking funds and all that, there's a certain schedule that you have, that the state adheres to. And I know that was part of the issue, is that we needed to have the funds authorized in case this moves forward, even if right now we're not sure.
Yeah, so the appropriation, it's not the starting gun for the whole project. It doesn't mean that just because this is appropriated, the project's a definite go. This is just the first step, and then at a later town meeting, we'd have to go for full design and construction funds. So that's kind of the decision point, but this gives us a lot more information. And in between now and then, what'll happen is, like with the school side, they're gonna have to do test pits and figure out where wetlands are and groundwater and things like that. And they have to design a real treatment plant. Like, it's not gonna be just a septic system you have at your house for what they're proposing to build. DEP requires something a little bit more managed. So, they're gonna have to build something that's real, and then that also gives them flexibility, because if the town decides, we don't want to pursue a West Acton continuation right now, the school still has in their back pocket the on-site. So this is just kind of keeping it open for the school.
And there was another question that I became aware of that, about the whole issue of betterments, because apparently there was talk in the building committee about the fact that if the new school building were sewered, that they'd have to pay betterments, and they were talking about how they couldn't capitalize it, and that was sort of a big issue. But maybe you could talk about a little bit more about betterments, not just with regard to the school building, but what betterments are, and,
Sure.
and who, when the schools, for example, would be on the hook for paying a betterment, what it is. I mean, it's
Sure.
a regular, it's a cost, an ongoing cost that the property owner has to pay. But then also, because you have in here, you have numbers for betterments. I know there have been some numbers thrown around, 100,000 for betterments, which is really wrong. The numbers for betterments in this project would be anywhere from 27,000 to 38,000, depending upon what configuration you're talking about. But maybe you could refresh the board. We're the sewer commissioners,
Yep.
but honestly, we do about this much
Oh, yeah.
sewer work, so any kind of refreshing of the mind that we can get, it's helpful. So.
Sure. So the Acton sewer bylaw, the way it works right now is, the way it works due to state law, the cost of a project is divided up amongst residential, non-residential properties, and then non-assessed properties. So properties that are owned by government, properties that are owned by nonprofits, things like that, they have their own assessments. So I explained the public property it's based off of what the avoided cost to build what they would have had to build on the property anyways. So if it was just to keep the math easy, if it was a $100 project and we said, oh, West Acton, that's a $5 septic system. So subtract 5 from 100, you're down to 95. There's a school property, it's a $20 septic system. You subtract 20. You keep subtracting all these general benefits that the greater town gets. So some cost of that $100 sewer project is repaving Mass Ave. Everybody in town benefits from repaving Mass Ave. So that cost gets deducted from the total cost of the project, and that gets paid as a general benefit to the town out of the tax base. What's left over is what's specific benefit to properties that benefit from sewer. So after that $100 project, when you subtract all these things, you're down to, whatever, $60. That gets divided up amongst all the properties. So the sewer bylaw right now has a method to equate pretty much everything back to a single-family home. So residential properties, a single-family home, they're defined as a single sewer betterment unit. A multifamily condo, things like that, they are assessed 2/3 of a sewer betterment unit for when they have 2 bedrooms or less. If they have 3 bedrooms or more, they're equivalent to a single-family house. And then for commercial properties, there's a formula in there that's based off of the potential build-out for the property. So it takes into account the area of the lot and the floor area ratio from the zoning. And that gives you like the most that it could be built out. And there's a formula that equates it back to a single-family home. So a commercial property could be 10 betterment units, It doesn't really look at if it's a restaurant or a dentist office. It just looks at what's the potential build-out of this. So, and then nonprofits, they are based off of Title V. So you add up all the betterments on one hand, and then you have a total project cost on the other, and then the cost per betterment unit is the total cost divided by however many betterment units you have. So the name of the game is always density. If you got a lot of properties or a lot of condos or anything like that, that brings up the SBU, the betterment total, then you get a lower per betterment cost because the total cost of the project's the same, but you're serving more people, if that makes sense.
And you see why we talk about this a lot. It's very technical, it's very complicated, and I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I think if my colleagues have questions, that's fine. I mean, we do have a public outreach session planned because it's not just going to be, people are not going to want to know just about this appropriation. They're going to want to know about the bigger potential project generally. And I know from the last time there was an effort to continue sewering into West Acton or parts thereof, the Spencer Tuttle Flint neighborhood. There was a lot of kind of confusion and fear and misunderstanding. So we're trying to sort of address fears, especially with regard to costs. So beforehand, before we even get to just dealing with this tiny appropriation comparatively. So anyhow, that's all.
Peter, you have a question?
Yeah, I am a member of the school building committee, so I've got a number of questions.
Sure.
I want to make sure I understand this issue as much as I can. We submitted the preferred schematic design to the Mass School Building Authority maybe last week. It's a dual school, Douglas and Gates, on the Gates property. I'm assuming MSBA will accept that. We have to submit, as I understand it, pretty much a final design by
Yes.
July. So and we're going to be wrestling with costs. It's already over budget, we need to cut costs. So right now it has a regular septic system designed on it. I've been arguing for a treatment plant on site for environmental reasons. And I don't know if after July I'll find out whether we're going to be able to fiddle with the design to change it, either to sewers or a treatment plant or whatever. But right now, that's the schedule. This $225,000 comes out of the sewer enterprise capital overlay.
Correct, yes.
When we voted for sewers 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was at this point, the town voted just to have the residents in the district pay for the costs of the sewers. We paid the betterments. I'm in the sewer district, so. Am I paying into this capital overlay? It went for a West Acton sewer and it's outside my district?
Thank you. That question did come up, and I think the sewer district, as defined in 20 years ago, includes the area that we're talking about today. So it's the same district. That people that aren't connected yet don't have the opportunity to pay for it yet, but they're part of the same district.
Okay, so they're paying into it, okay.
Well, they would be. They don't have the opportunity to do so yet.
Yeah, it's a chicken and the egg kind of thing. We're continuing with what we've done in the past with this project with West Acton, Spencer Total Flint. We're spending money, well, as the sewer commissioners, you're allowed to spend out of the sewer enterprise how you think benefits the sewer enterprise. So in the past, it's always been, when we developed the sewer district, we had a plan, the comprehensive water management resource plan, that planned for future areas, and it's been used before where the sewer enterprise funded more research going forward. And other places like Powder Mill Plaza and High Street, that connected shortly after the original sewer. So yeah, we're just continuing what we've always done.
Well, yeah, my specific question, and maybe I'm not being clear, I'm not understanding the answer, is are the members of the district paying more than the actual capital costs to build the district in order to build up this capital overlay account to study whether future parts of the district ought to be brought on board or not?
I mean, no, it was all part of the plan to begin with. This was all money we spent before anyways. So, and then, the original sewer system, there's a little over $1 million paid for supersizing, and that was for making the system bigger to accommodate future moving into other areas planned for from the comprehensive water management. So every time you guys approve a privilege fee from a development, those privilege fees went to pay down the supersizing, that $1 million. Okay. And that $1 million was paid off actually a couple of years ago. So you collect still privilege fees just because everybody has to pay the same coming in. So it's not, yeah, there's no West Acton users yet, so.
So the South Acton district is not paying for the supersizing, basically. It's privileges. I mean, why should I have to pay for supersizing?
It's been paid back through privilege fees, yes.
I mean, I do pay $600 a year or something in betterments, right? So, okay. And let me just make sure I understand these terminology here. You're saying that, so you're estimating 12 to 14 million for the total project cost, whether the schools hook up or not, or if it's only gates, or if it's a twin school. So
it's a 12 or 14 million dollar project.
It's very rough, I understand at this point, but
regardless,
what the schools would owe is the difference between what they pay for the septic system, which I guess is more than the sewers would cost, and what the sewers would cost? Is that what the avoidance fee is?
No, the avoided fee would be what the engineer is designing for a treatment plant on the site right now. Whatever that cost would be, that's the assessment on public property.
Okay. Okay. I gotta say, I mean, I wasn't involved, but my sense is the schools feel like they overpaid last time. And I don't want to get into it, I don't understand it, but that's my sense, and there's some trepidation about approaching the same project this time. So is this assessment rates, is that the betterment? Is that the terminology for betterments? Is that what an assessment rate is?
Sorry, where are you?
The next paragraph after the user fees land for land not subject to assessment?
Oh, in the cost estimate
No,
chart?
the administrative provisions is what I got.
Oh, yeah, that assessment, yeah. So that's the Acton general bylaws, the sewer bylaw.
That's the betterment, the assessment
Yes.
rates, and then, so what's the sewer privilege fees?
So sewer privilege fee is, let's say you were a single-family house and you paid one betterment unit, because that's what currently is there.
Yep.
Now, you put a subdivision that's 3
Oh, okay.
houses, so you pay that additional to,
So those are the costs, those are the revenue that's paying for the supersizing?
yeah, they paid down the supersizing debt, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me we're going to have this discussion with the schools over the next 6 months.
Yep, I agree.
The town meeting's going to vote on it in December, so I'm sure the design will be final at that point, so, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem.
Joan or John, any questions? Paul, I just want to say thank you. This memo, you laid it out very clearly, and your description tonight was very helpful for understanding even better what betterments are and how that's all calculated. So I just wanted to thank you, because I thought it was really clear. I know this is very far down the line, so I don't know how much that's been talked about yet, but the sort of portion that the town would have to pay for the capital costs, have we thought about, which I think is around 1.5 to 2.5 million, not including the school costs, have we talked about or started thinking about how, like, where that funding would come from? Are we thinking long-term debt on that, a debt what, I don't know. I don't know if that's been broached yet, or if we got to get to this part first,
Yeah.
have the preliminary design, get a better understanding of what those numbers are going to be before we do that. But I wasn't sure how much thought there'd been or discussion around that.
Yeah, I think we haven't talked about that in the
Okay.
committee. I don't even think that would come up at the committee. I think that's kind of,
A later discussion.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that was my only question. Otherwise, thank you again for putting this together. And again, tonight, we're not going to vote on anything, but just useful to have before our vote on the related warrant article next week. But I will take, Peter, you have a comment before I do
I
public?
just wonder, there's a warrant article on this issue?
Yep.
Oh.
That's the 225,000
Oh,
for
the
the
town
sewer.
meeting has to approve the appropriation?
Well,
It's part of the sewer
part of the
enterprise
sewer
appropriation.
enterprise
Oh,
budget.
okay.
Right.
It's not a standalone.
Right, but part of the sewer enterprise budget includes spending this. Okay, are there questions or comments from members of the public?
Chair of Projects West Acton, I hope that you pull this out as an individual item. I certainly will ask town meeting members to reduce the budget by that amount if you don't have it as a separate item. I want to make sure I heard something. I have a couple questions and some comments. The supersizing is paid back, is that correct? So then why are people talking about supersizing being like this mandate to use the supersizing? I guess that's a rhetorical question to be answered later. So this particular spending item would come out of the maintenance budget, the capital budget, is that correct?
Comes out of the sewer enterprise fund.
Okay, so that would be the current South Acton Sewer District the money set aside for maintenance.
No, it's not money set aside for maintenance. It's money that's related to, the sewer enterprise fund covers capital expenses, which this would be included under.
So capital, like new equipment and things that need to be...
And design for expanding the
replaced.
sewer district, yes.
So the current users effectively will have to replace that money if they need equipment for maintenance, like buying new capital?
No. I'm getting a no. And it's a much more complicated thing. I think that's something, John, if you want to. Okay. Yeah, do you want to ask all your questions?
Yeah, so I think that's the end of my questions. except I think that it's important for the business owners to know how many SBUs they would have, because some of them would be hit with quite a big fee. I walked around West Acton asking questions, and based on the rough figures that have been put forth, I've heard things like, that would put me out of business. But then we have a couple of people who really want to do more development in West Acton. And so for me, I see this as a small group of people benefiting from a public funding of infrastructure that would basically allow more development in West Acton. Some people want that. I'd like to know how many people who actually live in West Acton want that, but nonetheless, I feel like there's a lot of questions. I feel like this is pretty controversial, and I hope you pull it out on your own. Otherwise, we'll have one of those reverse votes where I'm asking people to pull it out, and they say yes, no, yes, no. It'll be a confusing vote, but I'm prepared to argue my case that it should be a separate vote. Thank you.
No, I think it's fine.
Oh, did you want to answer?
Franny, yeah, go ahead.
I'm a person from West Acton who is very excited about the potential for more development in West Acton, especially of vibrant businesses. I've talked to business owners who say they have to use paper products and only have very limited seating, and they would do much better, even if they have their own septic arrangements now. They would love to stop that and be able to depend on a sewer. So I want to thank you for moving this forward and continuing the process. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Franny.
Just to follow up, I mean the people who are living in the actual blocks of West Acton, like the apartments along Arlington and Central Street, would end up with a $30,000 bill each in each of those apartments, from what I understand. And so it's a pretty dramatic thing that I think the people who are directly impacted should be, I hope you all do a survey like you did in Spencer Tuttle. And I think that, I feel like this is a way to catch up with the schools, to try and get the schools on board so you can get more development in West Acton. And shoot, we feel like we're under attack. I mean, there might be a couple of people that live on the outskirts that want to have more going on in West Acton, but I feel like this is way too early to be making this kind of decision. And I think that at very least we should bring it out on floor as a separate vote. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the audience? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item number 8, 53 River Street Master Plan Committee update. So Peter, I think this is you. River Street?
Actually, I was expecting to hear Mangiarotti answer Tara's questions, and I'm wondering why that didn't happen.
Well, because I think if John wants to address some of the questions she asked, if he has answers to those now, go ahead.
Thank you.
So just following up, the last speaker asked questions about the capital and whether the proposed study would impact our ability to continue to do repairs and maintenance on the sewer infrastructure, and I just wanted to clarify that it would not. The town approved in the last year or two a comprehensive plant evaluation, which is a study of the entire infrastructure of the plant and a way to ensure that we're properly maintaining it going forward, and there's funding set aside within the enterprise budget to ensure that that funding can take place. So that is a concern that I think we've addressed. The other question about it being a separate article, the sewer enterprise is a separate article from the operating budget, so I think that may be responsive to the request.
Okay, thank you, John. All right, Peter, 53 River Street.
Okay, this is a report on the 53 River Street property. We were required under our charge, the committee was required to report to the Board of Selectmen after a year of meeting. And I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly. We have other issues on the agenda that should take some time. So the bottom line is here is that the committee is asking the Selectmen to endorse a warrant article that would restrict the uses of the property, whatever plan finally comes up, to uses that are allowed under the Community Preservation Act, namely open space, historic preservation, or recreation. And the reason for that is we have applied to the Community Preservation Committee to fund studies regarding the dam and removal of the dam, and in order to be sure that we're legally entitled to the CPA funding, we need to restrict the uses of the property to CPA-eligible projects. A town meeting originally appropriated money from free cash, $900,000 plus, to purchase 53 River Street, but that was for general municipal purposes, so theoretically, probably highly unlikely, but it could be used for other purposes. So we're asking for a warrant article to restrict it to those three purposes. Here's the South Acton Woolen Mill, around 1845. A sash and blind factory had made shoddy wool for soldiers' uniforms during the Civil War. Here's a painting, we don't know who did this, of the original mill. 1951, a fire destroyed the mill. Lazaro Paving acquired the property in 1982, used it for storing asphalt and other paving products. Rezoned to South Acton Village in 95. A lot of neighborhood complaints about noise, pollution, hours of operation of Lazaro. He also had originally come up with a plan to put 24 condominium units on the property before the town purchased it. These are kind of existing conditions. It's a beautiful piece of property, 7+ acres with less than 2 acres of uplands. The rest of it pretty much wetlands. Fort Pond Brook, the dam. Associated riverfront, floodplain bordering vegetated wetlands, historic dam and raceway that once powered the mill, block storage buildings on the riverbank. Stone block storage bins, those can probably be removed. Oil tanks, there's an oil tank that needs to be removed. We did at 21E, the town did in 2010. The property is fairly clean. $908,000 from free cash in October 16. The possible uses of the property at that time were historic preservation, open space, recreation, a possible small affordable housing project on the uplands. July 17th, the Selectmen created the committee charge. February 18, the committee began meeting. We retained students from the Conway School of Landscape Design to come up with some schematic designs of different uses of the property. And in June 18, they submitted a final report. We had a community forum. 119 people who attended the forum preferred a public park that highlights historical significance. 93 preferred conservation space that highlights the ecological value of the site. 31 felt that a park recreation area that allows for sports and events was most appropriate. And 22 members of the community at that meeting prioritized affordable housing. So these are the kind of conservation conscious, these are the designs that Conway students came up with, basically restoring it to ecologically conservation land was the number one. Number two is a commemorative park that would have, where the current concrete building is, a kind of kiosk or platform that could be used for fishing, other picnicking, other recreational activities. This would have a walkway along Fort Brook Pond that would be seasonally be able to be used as a access to the river. Living near the floodplain, this was the Conway School students' design for the affordable housing piece, big parking lot, not their preferred option. The committee asked them to do this, though, so they called it living near the floodplain and came up with a lot of reasons why it wouldn't be appropriate to have housing on the site. And here's a park design. We've been looking at making River Street one-way going east, connecting the park to the Assabet River Rail Trail where it comes into the South Acton train station. So all of those concepts were put together by the Conway students. We met with the Historical Commission, the Historic District Commission, the Concom, Public Works, dam removal consultants and experts. Barbara Donahue is an archaeologist who talked to us about dam removal. Dam inspection reports by GZA Geo-Environmental. One thing we found out was that the state didn't even know this dam existed. The state has an entity that deals with the dams. They knew Erickson's Dam was there, but they didn't know this was there. It just was not on any of their maps. When they found out it was, they actually required that a study be done of the safety of the dam. The initial study was that the dam was unsafe. It was classified as a small significant hazard potential dam. We had the town paid for a more significant study which found that it is a serious hazard, mostly because of the effect if the dam were to break on properties downstream. The state has now required the town to come up with a emergency response plan by the end of this year in case the dam fails. We've recommended that the town take some more immediate steps, cutting trees that are growing on the dam, maybe some signage, making sure the place is secure. I think there's been some real concern about the fencing not being in place recently. So we've applied to the CPC for a breach visibility study to find the wetlands, survey and bathymetry, whatever that means, sediment sampling and evaluation, hydrologic and hydraulic analysis for certain flood events, and understand the flow volume and forces downstream so that we can move to the next step of planning to breach the dam. The concept would be to try to retain as much of the historical aspects of the dam as possible, the abutments, probably other artifacts around the site that would honor the history of the site. But since the dam is unsafe, even the historic people agree that something needs to be done to ensure that it doesn't fail. So phases 2 and 3 will have 25% design solution permitting requirements. Again, this is after we do these studies that the CPA has been requested to fund. Phase 3 then would be the 100% design solution. It would include the dam, work on the dam to breach the dam, and creating either the park or the conservation area or historical. So the committee recommends the 53 River Street Master Plan Special Committee voted unanimously on February 20th to restrict the use of the 53 River Street property to open space, historic preservation, and recreation uses. I will say that I followed up with the Housing Authority and the ACHC, and also people who deal with Miracle Field, and had come to one of our meetings and were promoting a group home there. None of those entities are supporting housing on the site at this point. We studied it. The Housing Authority is worried about flooding. The original concept was 12 units of senior housing. That's too small to get funded and built. They're worried about flooding, inaccessibility of the site for seniors. The ACHC voted not to support housing on the site. And I'm understanding from the Miracle Field people that Minuteman ARC is not interested in putting a group home on the site because of its, again, accessibility problems to amenities such as shopping and transportation and other things. So Reluctantly, the committee, after all that study, has voted to not include housing in this recommendation and restrict it to historic preservation, open space, and recreation. And what we're asking for is that a warrant article make that clear, and the selectmen support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Questions? Janet?
So you're proposing that we get an article on the annual town meeting warrant? Okay. Well, it's interesting because I was one of the people who didn't think housing should go on that property. I was at that meeting of the committee when we had the presentation by the graduate students, and yeah, I could see all the hands in the audience and what they were supporting for. And I think there were dots too, but anyhow. But I remember that the committee ended up just voting to keep housing in the mix. And I know that ACHC never really was keen on having housing there. I think Acton Housing Authority was more interested in it, but it was really a problematic site for all the reasons that you've mentioned. So I think that it's probably the soundest decision to restrict its use to those things. And I think that, you know, recreation and historic preservation and maybe preserving some of the dam. I mean, it's really an interesting structure, but yeah, if it's safe, unsafe, you have to do something about it. But it'd be great to have that and then have the little kiosk or the information placards so people could exercise and actually learn something about the history of the site. Because it really is, I was the one who did the presentation for buying it, and I remember really being fascinated by the wool mill and what it was, you know, that they had used recycled wool, and I thought, oh, we should have fabric recycling today. And then I really discovered that there are fabric recyclers, so didn't know, and now we have it at our transfer station. So anyhow, but thank you for all of that work. Finally, you've come to this, and maybe we'll see something happen while we're all still young.
Joan or John?
Peter, with respect to the dam, there are essentially three options: either fix it, take it out, or replace it.
Well, I think fixing it and replacing it are probably the same thing. The cost of that is 4 or 5 times millions of dollars, as opposed to maybe $500,000 or so to breach it, is my understanding. Part of it is, I'm not sure the historic people would agree with this, but my understanding is that part of it is not so historic. There's some concrete that was poured on top of it at one point, and I'm not sure how old that is or whether that really has much historic significance to it. But there certainly is parts of it that surely have historic significance, and we try to preserve as much of that as possible.
Well, thank you and the committee for all the good work.
Yeah, just echo the thanks for the work. I attended your forum as well, and I thought it was very useful. Economy School students, we had hoped would help us with the Main Street committee, but ended up going to you guys later. But no, they did a great job, and I think this makes a lot of sense, and particularly what you're asking for us tonight, which is just to add a warrant article limiting the uses to these specific uses, which I think is helpful for people. And then the committee will continue the work on figuring out what's going to happen with the dam and then what that means for the ultimate resolution of the property. So I thank you for that and for this update. Are there questions or comments from the audience?
Thank you for this wonderful work. I'm very excited, and I agree. I was with Janet. I saw the early Conway drawings, and I thought, my God, housing would be terrible there. In fact, there's all this flooding that already exists, much less if the dam is gone. But I know it's early to discuss uses, even within the limited set, but I want to put a good word in for accessible access to the water, boardwalk or whatever. I've been recently visiting somebody in the Cape who has mobility issues, and they have an accessible boardwalk out to the harbor, and it's really beautiful. And when we finally discovered it, and I got her out to the edge of this, she just said, oh, this is so beautiful, and she really opened up, and I think that it's really important to consider that here on River Street, Riverwalk, River Boardwalk. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Okay, seeing none, then do we need to take a vote, John, to put this on the warrant? I know we can still add articles, or do you want to just add it and we'll do our recommendation next week?
We can add it. And if you don't like it, you can take it off next week? How's that work?
That sounds perfect. So we
Okay.
will move forward with adding that to the warrant, and we'll take our vote on the recommendation next week. And I will add that to my list of ones to assign. Okay, all right. Item number 9, the Piper Lane LLC updated application and comments. So as folks know, we received an updated application, or some updates to the application for the proposed 40B project off of Piper Lane about, I don't know, a little over a week ago. Originally, they only wanted to give us 10 days to respond to that. We've gotten them to give us until March 1st, which is Friday, to offer our comments on the updates that on the updated application. So we wanted to bring that before everybody tonight to discuss it, and I'll ask for, and we can do initial comments, or we can just hear from members of the audience, and then we can talk about what we want our comments to be. Because of the shortened timeline, I talked to the town manager, and my proposal is that the town manager, based on the feedback that we provide tonight on the comments that we would like to see, the town manager will draft a letter, send it out to the members of the board this week, and the members will respond just to the town manager, and he will put together the final letter and submit that to Mass Housing, and then put that in our packet for Monday night to see, because we don't have time for another meeting before then. So that's sort of the idea tonight, is to get a sense from everybody about what we want to include in that letter. So with that, are there initial comments, or do people just want to hear from the audience? Janet?
I just wanted to mention, I was talking with Nancy Tavernier, and she just made a point. They're meeting tonight, and she said ACHC has not changed its position. It's still 40 units, and that's still an issue for ACHC. So the position that they filed, whatever, earlier is still valid. And frankly, that's my initial concern, is that there's nothing changed with the number of units as far as I know, although I haven't seen the updated plan, or is it just the roadway, that sort of shifting of the roadway away?
Yeah, I mean, what they sent, there's no changes to the
Yeah,
number of
and
units or
then
anything
answering
like
the
that.
question yes instead of no. I mean, I didn't notice anything substantially different. So I would think that our original submission is still legitimate, so anyhow, that's all I have to say right now.
Sure. Any other initial comments, or John?
Given the comments we made on November 5th, I thought they would have presented a more heftier, further application, but it's still pretty thin.
Yeah, I agree. And like Janet said, I mean, not much has changed except for moving the roadway, which frankly makes it less safe in terms of the sight lines and the issue that we had brought up there, which is disappointing. And while they did clarify some issues in the application, it does feel like there are things that are still missing, that have gone unanswered. So I think there are still a lot of issues for us to re-highlight in our response to Mass Housing that I think will be appropriate to do. But so with that, I'll open up to the audience if there are people here who would like to comment.
Jim Smetter, Grant, West Acton. At the time of the original application, I wrote a very narrowly focused letter about some land stewardship committee information about trails in the back of the property and the existence of native artifacts back there. So I just wanted to clarify that, sort of stepping back from that committee role and looking at it as a citizen, the project makes as little sense to me as it does to everybody else that's written to you. It's way oversized for that site. It removes any of that remaining wildlife value in that area. And of course, all the other issues that have been raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay.
Michaela Moran, 80 School Street. I'm going to give you a copy of a letter that came in today
The one from Dan, so we
from
have
Dan Hunt.
copies of that.
You have copies
Yes.
of that?
Yeah.
So I don't have to give these to you?
Yes.
Anybody else want to read what he said?
I didn't include, we have, Lisa emailed it to, so I asked her just to print the letter from Dan, not all the
Yeah, the
attachments.
letter's 5 pages, the rest
Attachments
is,
were more.
the 39
Yeah.
pages. I think that's enough. Our Santa group, I believe, would really like you to, in your comments to MHA, to reiterate the sloppiness of that application, the seeming untruthfulness about the litigation that they are under, and really push them about that sort of thing, because when you have a state agency that is supposed to be taking in information from any kind of applicant, that then allows that agency and the applicant to go forward with a program that uses state funds to do something, they ought to be upfront about it to begin with. And this sort of fraud, in a way, is really shocking. And I would like the town to be able to make that point with MHA. And it's really not a great plan, but we all know that, so thank you.
Thank you, Miguel.
Gene Beresin, 80 School Street. As I understand it from John, what you said last time, that there's only one or two ways that a PEL can be blocked. And the one that I think we're asking for is disqualification, right?
Is the developer qualified?
Is the developer
qualified to do the project?
I would say no. They put in a project from Shrewsbury. They called us Bolton. They miscalculated the numbers. They didn't do the sight lines. They failed miserably. They projected a 1,575-foot long dead end with only one entry and exit when the town requires 500. They moved the road west because they didn't want to use the overburdened easement, and that worsened the sight lines. Okay? So it's hard for me to figure out how, and they lied about litigation. Now, whether the litigation came to fruition, whether there was a conclusion, I know there was 2012 and 2013, the two that were listed by Dan, we don't know the ultimate outcome. But they didn't check off the box. Under penalty of perjury. Now, what would any fiduciary group, any bank, if they say, have you been in the last 10 years in any litigation? And they say no. That's a lie. That's perjury. Now, they could have said yes, but we were found not guilty. Fine. So, time after time after time in this application. Another one, they didn't change, when they moved the road to the west, they didn't redo the plans to change the 4 units that were on the Shaw property. That was going to be a drainage basin. What's it going to be? So how are we supposed to say as a town that we're prepared to accept this developer that's been uniformly voted down by 135 letters, including all of our boards and committees and ACHC, and say that this man is qualified? I think it merits full disqualification, and I would appeal that our town council, on the basis of many of the things that I've said and more, say this is evidence of somebody that we don't feel is qualified to build a respectable place abutting the historic district. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Hahn, 105 School Street. Just a couple updates. We've met with Representative Benson and Senator Jamie Eldridge, both of whom toured the site with a group of us. First, Senator Eldridge back just before Christmas last Friday, Jen Benson. We toured the entire site. Well, not the entire site. I mean, we didn't try to trespass, but we gave them a good idea. We had maps. We explained the whole site. We gave them our huge binder, both of them. We gave them all our attorney letters, all our updated letters that you've gotten from us, from the Santa group. And Jen Benson said she was 100% opposed to this project and would be producing a letter that Santa can look at, and a draft letter we can look at and comment on before they submit it to Mass Housing. And she's trying to get Jamie Eldridge to sign onto the letter, which we believe he'll probably do. So we think that's encouraging that both of those people are opposed to the project. Jen Benson did comment that she said it was the only 40B she knew of where everybody was opposed to it. And she said it's usually the neighbors don't want it and the town does, or vice versa, or whatever, but she's never seen one with such universal opposition. Back in Katie's email to us a couple weeks ago, you mentioned the Alta surveys being whopping expensive, I believe. I think it was $100,000 or something. And I would encourage you to press Mass Housing on having the developer do that study and that survey, because we're not sure of some of the titles on these properties. I mean, it's 4 sites or 4 properties combined together. Some of the title stuff is pretty fishy, like inherited a site for $1, and we can't find any evidence of, the thing legally passing from one entity to another. So to us, the whole title issue is still very fuzzy, and if you don't have clear title on all the properties, they don't deserve the project. That's part of the requirement for a 40B. So lastly, I would say in the letter, if you can ask that you want to see, this is a suggestion from Dan Hill, I think he does this on projects that he's worked on, is that we would like to see all the correspondence, communications, et cetera, that Mass Housing undertook when they reviewed the application. You can get those through a FOIA request, but obviously if we ask for them, it's a lot easier. But Dan said we're entitled to that information, and we'd like to know, frankly, how they reacted to the first application, how they reacted to the supplemental information, and just what they talked about. So I appreciate that if you would put that in the letter. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Chair Fredericks, West Acton. It's my understanding that if a municipal agency engages in malfeasance or inappropriate application of the law, that a town can hold them accountable for that, where that agency is trying or would try to supersede or override local zoning. So I'm hoping that the Board of Selectmen will write a stronger letter, because I feel like there was a lot of opinion that the first letter was somewhat weak, although it did oppose, that it could have opposed quite in much stronger fashion to recognize that the first application had anomalies, inaccuracies, that they were processing an application for somebody engaged in litigation, all of these steps that agency could be held accountable for, and declare that whole process illegal. I feel like we should be strong enough to do that. I also feel like we should be prepared to back up a ZBA no decision and let people know that we're prepared to do that to protect this town. Thank you.
Alyssa Nickel, I live on School Street. I just wanted to follow up and let you know what I spoke with Senator Eldridge about, because he agreed during the site visit that he would contact the executive director of Mass Housing, Crystal Corngay, and get back to us to tell us how that conversation went. And he said that it was extremely disappointing, and I asked him if he could let us know who has oversight at Mass Housing, because if he's going to the executive director and not getting the results that he wants, I wanted to know who do we appeal to next. And I think that maybe the town might be a stronger candidate than the citizens to do that, town council. He said that the agency that has oversight over Mass Housing is their board of directors. Thank you.
Right, they're a quasi-state agency. I work for a quasi, so they're not typical state agency where you're underneath the secretariat, but typically your board is, you have a board that's appointed by frequently the governor. So they're board of directors, and I imagine they're, well, I don't know who their chair is, so I don't want to speak out of turn. Franny.
Hi, Franny Osmond, Half Moon Hill. I'm just thinking that we're going to keep spending a lot of resources to try to work this out. And we've always had the opportunity to put some CPA money into purchasing this land, but only up to the appraised value, which was never enough to bring proper compensation to the owners. But we always had the choice that we could put town funds in above that and bring it up to a higher amount. So I think we should keep an eye on how many resources we're putting into trying to save this, and consider possibly making an arrangement to purchase the land.
Thank you, Franny. Yes. Do you mind just turning on the microphone?
Elena Petrov, 1 Pinewood Road. I live in a neighborhood not like in a close proximity to this particular property that we're talking, and it's my third meeting I'm attending. But I didn't hear, is there any kind of value or the safety of the driving involved in this application? Wherever I can see, I don't see the real decision how these people will be moving out of that particular place. Every week I see the traffic accidents in the traffic light in the Piper Road, cross Route 2, and I just don't understand. And the same in the School Street. Is there any kind of plan, the town involved and the town policeman involved? How are we going to move the people around out of that particular project in this particular location? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a plan? No. They have not submitted a traffic study, and we do have concerns that were iterated in our first letter about the safety related to the driveway and the access. So the question was, sorry, just to repeat for the those watching on TV, the question was related to, is there a public safety plan? No, I mean, the police chief hasn't, typically doesn't, I mean, the applicant doesn't ask the police chief for a plan related to that, so they haven't submitted anything. And again, in our letter, we've reiterated that the town has safety concerns related to that, and that's part of why we're opposed to this, or have stated before. Well, okay, anybody else?
Just one last question, Tara Fredericks. So every developer has their price, and we never thought that the Walker would walk away, even though it was expensive. We could have bought it a lot cheaper, just like Piper Road, we could have bought it a lot cheaper. Has anybody asked him how much he wants to walk away from this? And do we think that's a good idea to just ask? Because maybe it's something we're willing to pay for. Thank you.
Yes, if you could just come up to the microphone.
John, 16 Piper Road, John Chalmers. I've been in town for about 40 years. So the problem is if you're going east on School Street, beyond the fire station, you go around S turn, going on downhill grade. If you're going to turn on Piper Road, you get cars speeding the other way around S turn, going westbound on School Street. I've been closely clipped almost twice in the last 3 months trying to turn on Piper Road. I mean, the road's in good condition. You know, it wasn't icy or anything. People just don't stop. You can't see people. When I make the turn coming eastbound, I'm watching for cars come around the bend going westbound. I can't see putting another road on Piper Lane. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, if board members want to indicate specific points that you want in the letter, then John, as I said, then we can vote to authorize John to draft a letter. We'll comment on that individually to him, and then he will submit it to Mass Housing on behalf of the board and the town. So if board members have things they would like to say. John.
You know, I think we have to keep in mind in this Pell process that Mass Housing's mission is to move affordable housing projects along. And their idea is that the suburbs should do their share, and I'm sure in the back of their minds they think about the 2016 vote where we did not rezone Kelly's Corner to a mixed-use development. But for the task at hand, the two elements of a Pell letter is the town at 10%, and we are not, we're about 6.7%, and is the developer qualified? Now, Mike Busby, I met him at the Mass Municipal Conference in January, and he certainly heard from all of us on why the project is wrong for every reason. What we need to give him is something for Matt, for his operation, to hang their hat on, that these developers are not people we really want to do business with. And under the qualified umbrella, I go back to Dan Hill's letter of November 5, 2019, on page 4, where he talks about, he makes three, it's from the questionnaire, the application. Are there any pending litigation with respect to the applicant's entities? 2, are there any outstanding liens or judgments on any properties owned by any of the applicants? And 3, I think the most telling is, during the last 10 years, have any of the applicants ever been a defendant in a lawsuit involving fraud, gross negligence, misrepresentation, dishonesty, breach of fiduciary responsibility, or bankruptcy? Dan cited 4 cases in his letter. One was a 2012 case in Essex County, Massachusetts, in the Superior Court with the, I guess it was the Wingate 40B in Salisbury, which the developer cited a number of times. Unclear what the cause of action is. I think it's important to know, and I think I asked David on late last week, if Dan could follow up as to what was the outcome of that case, what was the disposition. If it's unclear from the records, call the plaintiff's lawyer, and I'm sure they'll be very clear about it. There was a 2007 case in the Eastern District of Virginia for a breach of fiduciary duty. Let's find out the outcome and disposition of that case, call the lawyer if necessary. Now, that may still be pending because it's only a year plus old. 2013, in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Massachusetts, there was a fair debt collection practices matter about making false representations, engaging in coercive and harassing behavior. That should be pinned down as to what the outcome of that case was. Same thing in 2012 in the U.S. District Court for Illinois, unfair and unconscionable actions toward a debtor. I mean, those are things that, ring bells, and call up, if it's not clear from the court's record, call counsel for the plaintiff. I'm sure they'd be glad to talk. So let's find out if there's something there. And also, John, in responding, we are closing in very quickly on achieving a 2-year safe harbor on the basis of the Avalon 2. So we're running in very close parallel tracks, and we've got to get the safe harbor certification ahead of the Piper Lane developers filing their application for their permit. Now, on November 5, the board was, very, very strongly on record as being opposed to the project. I think we should follow on, with a good letter. And I'd also attach to the letter Dan Hill's 2 letters of November 5, 19 and February 22nd, 2019. Now, many of the comments that he makes there would be more appropriate for the ZBA round of activity. That's assuming the Pell letter is granted and the application proceeds and the next round of activity takes place before the Zoning Board of Appeals. But it's okay to include that. Let's try to keep them as busy as we can chasing down our comments and our concerns, and to the extent it's played out longer, that's to our advantage. And I was, very supportive of Franny's comments and Tara's comments about how far were we apart from buying this property several years ago. I know there were, considerable efforts, and I guess the problem was it appraised out, this is the Magoon parcel at about 505. They looked at the parcel we bought in 2009, 2010 for approximately $740,000. We were able to turn around and sell the 1-acre house parcel for about, I think it was about $400,000. So, and now they're up to, I think it's about $850 for the developer. So I think the spread is about $350,000, to do that. But, let's mount as good a letter, as we can. I always hated as a lawyer just to, throw, have a motion with 10 parts, and hopefully the judge will respond favorably to one. But, I think a lot's at stake here, and we've got to do the best we can on it.
Joan, anything on that? Okay. Peter?
I think I agree that we can put everything in, but Mass Housing is not going to deny this letter on the safety issues. That really, I'm assuming they would see as something that the Zoning Board of Appeals ought to rule on. And if, in fact, there's enough evidence to support that it would be unsafe to build it the way they're proposing it, hopefully the ZBA, and the ZBA rejected it on that ground, so hopefully that ZBA would be upheld on appeal. There's this argument in Dan Hill's letter. To me, the legal arguments are stronger about this prior special permit application that was filed. It's attached to the application here and denied. The developer never showed up, was a different developer, a guy named Douglas Shaw, I guess. I don't think that's the same developer. And if you, there's a safe harbor under the regulations, apparently, if you had a special permit denied within 12 months of this application. And it was only 3 months, I think, between when that was denied and this was first filed. So those are the kind of legal arguments I think that we should press, and I support, again, checking with town council and maybe expanding on that argument. I mean, he cites the regulation here and says we're supposed to get a safe harbor. To the extent we can support that legal argument, I think that would be one thing that might prevent this letter from issuing.
Peter, just if I make one comment on, the way I read Dan's safe harbor argument was that that was to prevent a developer who was seeking a special permit and the permit was denied, for that developer, him or herself, to come back immediately and said, well, you turned me down on the special permit, now I'm going to stick in a monster 40B. These are two different individuals, so I think it's a different circumstance.
Yeah, that may very well be, and I don't know, town council may have some input on that if we were to ask her, I suppose. Strictly speaking, yeah, I mean, the regulation doesn't seem to say that, so anyway, but.
Okay, Janet?
Yeah, I would say that particular argument I didn't think was real strong, because there's a question, and they're talking about 90 School Street, and the question is they're talking about the site, and that ZBA decision was kind of, if you could have a dismissal without any sort of legal impact, and that would have been what they would have done, because basically the developer was whoever it was at the time was a no-show. It was sort of a default judgment or something. So, but I thought that it was debatable whether 90 School Street was the same parcel. But I think that the idea of, even though we haven't verified all of the citations to the litigation and everything, I think that we are on notice of them because of Dan Hill's letters. And we can certainly say that there is sort of a plausible concern about litigation and the forthrightness of the applicant in the application, and then the sloppiness that everybody has noticed. I mean, I was just sitting here looking at this thing about buildable area calculations, and I'm thinking, wetland area, 41,736 square feet or 1.09 acre. Now, I happen to know because our square footage is 100,000 square feet, and I had to go and figure out what that was in acres. And you know, an acre is about 43.6. It's 43,600 square feet. It's not 41,000. I mean, this is this 41,736 is actually slightly under an acre. And it's like little things like that. I don't know who put this together. Somebody, I would assume that an engineer did these calculations. If the engineer did, he should be slapped for not knowing how to use a calculator. And if, you know, some secretary of the office who's not good at math did it, you know, in her head, then poor woman or man for not, you know, not getting help with that. But I mean, that sort of thing is inexcusable. It's a real small thing, but it's just one of among a number of things that have been, you know, kind of deficient in this application, and it makes you just wonder whether they really take the project seriously, because as people said, they had other town references, and it looked like kind of out of the box proposal, plop it down on this parcel and see if it sticks and if it flies. And you know, I think that that's a really poor way of doing business, because especially in this case, you're getting a lot of pushback, but it's wasting a lot of people's time and energy trying to deal with this, when if we'd had a decent proposal, maybe we, you know, it'd be more productive on both sides. So, but those are the things. I mean, I think just talking about the question about trustworthiness and then all the other things that we talked about, you know, the fact that it's dense, and all the other issues that they've addressed. I mean, yeah, the traffic thing, whether or not Mass Housing is going to believe that or accept that is debatable. But you know, those are the things that were strong arguments to start with, and they're going to be an issue. I mean, if it passes muster with Mass Housing, the ZBA is going to have to deal with the whole traffic safety issue. And you know, I think it would be very difficult to see an approval project that's going to create a big traffic mess for the town. You know, okay, so we'll get sued or something, but I don't see approving, you know, this project and just having to suffer the consequences of traffic congestion and accidents, making things worse than they are right now, which is pretty bad, I guess, so.
Yeah, I would agree. I do think, it's important to highlight the issues around the qualifications and the concerns that we have with the completeness and the accuracy of the application and of the qualifications of the developer. In addition, I do think it is important to still reiterate the other concerns we have with this, and frankly, to just underscore that the revision that they provided, in fact, made it a worse application in terms of safety than what they had originally submitted. And I think that's important for Mass Housing to hear and to understand from us. And I do think we could put in there a request for correspondence, as well as a request specifically for the appraisal that they had done, so that we can see that in case this does go forward as well. I think that would be helpful for us to have for the future part as well. And it does sound like there are some questions about, I think the thing is that we don't know necessarily which is going to be the argument that they will respond to most, so it's worthwhile to put them in there and then see what sticks with them. I don't want to, as Joan said, necessarily like overwhelm them with everything, but I do think it's worthwhile to point these issues out to them. So I think we're sort of all generally on the same page with that, and can take a vote momentarily to authorize the town manager to draft a letter, unless he has additional questions. I will allow brief follow-up from the audience.
Yeah, just a comment, because it seems to me that because the state agency has been non-responsive to what I think are very serious allegations, that we're dealing with a rogue agency, and I wonder if we could be appealing to a higher power, maybe asking a judge to say, no, don't be issuing this letter, rather than waiting for them to do something and trying to undo it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a lawyer. We will ask Dan Hill for the outcomes, but it's my understanding that section that you alluded to, John, was under penalty of perjury, and they said no. And my understanding is that if you lie under oath, under penalty of perjury, that you've been in litigation, it doesn't matter what the outcome is. Doesn't matter. They may have won the case. Great, good for them. But to lie, in my view, is a disqualification. It's under penalty of perjury, because I read the top of it very carefully. Thank you.
Again, the key thing is give Busby and company something to hang their hats on in denying it, because they deny very few of these.
2 points. In regard to that safe harbor about the special permit, it's the property, it's not the individual developers. So Paquette, who's the developer for the 40B, has a PNS on 90 School Street. So that's why whatever happened previously on 90 School Street is going to apply to Mr. Paquette trying to now file a 40B, at least in my reading of Dan Hill's thing. The other is that I hate to say I've read a lot of these letters from Mass Housing about whether they approve PELs or don't, but I have seen some rejections. And one was in Reading, and one of the things they cited was the town's progress towards 40B, developing 40B. So I think in your letter you should cite that we approved 446 Mass Ave. You guys, I believe, just voted another 31 unit in favor of that being on the Walker property. Avalon looks like it'll sail right through. I went to the hearing and no one had any objection whatsoever. They had a couple loose ends to tie up. So that's, 31 units, 86 units, all of which count. So it's good to cite, things that are happening, because I have seen them reject a PEL because the town was making good progress, or reject a project because the town was making good progress with a bunch of other projects. So
They did mention that, I think, in the meeting John and I had. That was where the Kelly Corner one came up, that they viewed that negatively. But, and I think we had pointed some of those other ones out. And now that we have actual Board of Selectmen votes in support of the Avalon project as well as the Walker project, or the project on the Walker property that would go through the Housing Authority. We won't have a town meeting vote yet, but I do think they are ones that we can reference, at least as Board of Selectmen support for those, so.
Okay, thanks.
Certainly. Yep, Janet.
I just wanted to say, I was at the Zoning Board of Appeals where they were hearing about the Avalon proposed amendment, and they continue the hearing to March 20th. They wanted a month to tie up a bunch of loose ends, but I mean, the assumption kind of is that once they do that, they'll close and they'll vote to approve. And I think under the safe harbor rule, it's once the permit is filed, I think with the clerk, that then it's triggered. I think you have to get it validated, but anyhow, but that's the telling date is when it's filed with the clerk.
Peter.
Yeah, no, I would just list the Powder Mill Road property as part of the town support for affordable housing also, over 200 units of rental. The selectmen haven't reviewed it yet, but I believe the ACHC voted to support it, so there are issues with it being partly in Maynard, and
Right.
I think that's what's delaying it, but I think the ACHC voted to support it.
That's a good one. Yes.
I just want to, Franny Osmond, add to what I said before. You know, when I was selectman, I spent a lot of time, many hours, talking to the owners of that property, and I just feel it would be good karma. You know, they really wanted to ultimately see conservation land with their back lot, and we've just tried, and I really appreciate the land use department and Selby trying to work it out. And it was just this little piece, this little key property, you know, the Shaw property, that if whoever owned that could turn the Magoon property into more valuable property. And so we didn't maybe do things right, and we haven't done things right, but it would be such good karma, and to see that whole area come with the dream of the people who live around there, including the present homeowners, to see that land go into conservation, even and especially if at the bottom you could have by the road some affordable housing aspect of it. So I just wanted to really reiterate how good an outcome that would be, rather than continuing to pursue. I mean, I know you're trying to keep from pursuing it, but it just would be a really good outcome.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Okay, do I have a motion to authorize the town manager to draft and then submit a letter on behalf of the board?
So move.
Second.
Okay. Joan has made a motion, Jan has seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. John, do you have anything, or do you feel like you have a sense from us about what you want in that, and then you'll send it out? Okay, perfect. Excellent. All right. Item number 10, the Volunteer of the Year reception. We have tentatively scheduled for May 17th, 2019. Peter, do you want to talk about that a little? This is just so we wanted to get this on.
Sure. I've been speaking with Lisa, who does a wonderful job on organizing these things. She's got the sketches that we hand out available, I guess. Is May 17th the date now? That's the new date? Okay, so we'll be at Nara Park, and each selectman gets to select the Francis Faulkner Volunteer Award for exemplary service. We want to try to nominate people before town meeting so that the members of the current board can nominate people. So we need a little schedule to come up with when that'll happen. And it should be a bang-up affair, a nice recognition of our hardworking volunteers.
Yeah, so thank you, Lisa and Peter, for working, and John for working on this, putting this together again. So thinking with that in mind, I guess the date of May 17th and the idea of getting the names before town meeting, so Jen and I are still on the committee. What date do you want us to send our nominations And are we sending them to you, to Lisa, to John? Send them,
I'm not sure.
send it to, yeah, we'll send it to Lisa and John, okay.
Send them to John? Okay. I don't think we did that last year. We just announced it, but
We send them because there was.
it might avoid
Yeah.
somebody picking the same person twice or something, so.
Okay, so so why don't we plan for before our March 18th meeting? Because then we can announce them at that meeting if we want to. Yeah, I think that might be appropriate. Then we could announce it at the meeting, and then those people can also plan to come on May 17th, and that gives them time. Yeah, exactly. So typically what we did last year, what I think makes sense is everybody wants to think about the liaison committees that you have and pick somebody that is on one of your committees. And then just read over maybe the thing from last year about kind of what the qualifications for the word, but it should be somebody who's, volunteered for the town for a long time and provided exemplary volunteer service.
Can you circulate that kind of policy we
Description,
adopted that describes what criteria we're going to consider, if you can find it? Okay.
Somewhere from last year.
Okay.
Okay.
And also, Lisa will be sending out a save the date notice, in the beginning of March, is it? Yeah, so that all the volunteers will know, and hopefully as many as possible will show up.
That sounds great. Well, thank you, John, Lisa, and Peter for working on this. Okay, I think that is it. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Jenna has moved, Joan has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, earlier than.